One of the primary questions that we are often asked is, should I keep my horse indoors or outdoors during a hurricane? So if we have an impending storm coming, where is the best place to house these horses during that event? It depends a little bit on what type of housing you have available for your horses, but most of our horses do very well actually staying outdoors in a large paddock or pasture during a storm, as long as you're securing some potential projectiles. If you've got some equipment or things around the pasture or outdoors that might be a danger to the horses, just making sure that you're tying down or securing those items or removing those items and placing them somewhere safe where they can't become projectiles. Horses are really good at evading some of the worst weather. A lot of the times if they're housed as small groups or larger herds in a pasture, they'll actually gather together and kind of just turn their hindquarters to the wind and the rain. Housing horses indoors is an option, but usually we only recommend that if you know with your construction or your design of the barn if it's actually going to withstand hurricane force winds. What we get into trouble with is if horses end up getting trapped in a barn or housing structure that becomes damaged during a hurricane. Again, that debris can cause injury or death, or it makes it harder to reach those horses and get them out after the storm has passed. So outdoor housing is perfectly fine. Depends a little bit on your situation and the type of pasture or paddock or type of barn that you have at your facility. A lot of horses end up with eye injuries, and eye injuries are very serious in horses and they cost a lot of money to treat and to care for. So we certainly want to try to avoid that. So sometimes owners can actually place a fly mask on the horse's face during that hurricane if those horses are going to be left outdoors. That just helps sticks and debris and things that might be flying around during the storm, preventing those things from penetrating the eye or causing a serious eye injury. Post-hurricane, we often get flooding. So if there's high water, getting those animals to higher ground is really important. Sometimes planning ahead for that is important. So again, if you're going to keep your horses outdoors, make sure that it is not a low-lying area that is prone to flooding. If that's the case, you need to try to house them on a little bit higher ground, or maybe even consider evacuation and moving them to a safe area that you know is not going to flood. Once the hurricane is passed, if there is standing water, making sure that you don't put horses back out until that water has receded. And even before those horses go out, you're going to want to check fence lines, make sure that you're checking for any debris or anything that could harm the horse that's in that horse's environment post-storm. Another really important tip is making sure that you have some identification on your horse. If a fence comes down with tree debris or tree damage and they get loose from a pasture or paddock, how are you going to get that animal back? So helping others work with you to help retrieve that horse and bring it back to you. So there's several things that you can do. Oftentimes we will put some kind of identification collar around the horse's neck and write with permanent marker, telephone number, address if it fits, maybe your name, the horse's name, but definitely at least a contact number. The other thing that can be done is just taking like a dog tag and braiding it into the horse's mane. So that's another identification piece that can be on the horse. We try not to leave nylon or rope halters on horses. A breakaway halter, or again like a breakaway leather strap, is usually the best way to actually put something on the horse that will stay on their neck or their face. Another thing that can be done is using livestock chalk or some kind of marker to actually write on the horse's body. You can write, again, maybe your telephone number on the horse's side in big bright colors. The other thing that you can do, depending on the color of your horse's hooves, again, you can take some type of permanent marker and actually write phone number, horse's name, or your name on maybe their 2 front feet. And so again, as long as it's permanent, it's a way to get a phone number written on your horse so that, again, you can get them back to you. Another permanent form of identification that is becoming more common and very helpful to horse owners is microchipping. So some horses are already microchipped, their owners have already done that, but if you haven't, maybe consider microchipping your horse. Basically, it's a very small little microchip, just like we use with our cats and dogs, so it can be read with a pocket scanner, but it's just injected into the nuchal ligament on top of the horse's neck, so a veterinarian can work with you to do that. But again, that is a permanent form of ID that if your horse gets loose during a heavy storm event, you'll have a means to identify that horse and again be able to retrieve that horse better. During a storm event and certainly following a hurricane, most of the times we are losing power. We may be without power for multiple days. If your farm's water system is on a well, you're going to have increased difficulty making sure that your animals are getting enough water. So for horse owners, we recommend storing or stocking up on some water ahead of time. Horses on average will drink between 10 and 12 gallons of water a day, more if it's really hot and humid outside. And so again, enough water is important. One thing you can do is line a trash can or multiple trash cans with plastic bags and fill those pretty much full with water. You can also get just the big rain barrels or some kind of large barrel that you can store water in. So, you know, your local ag supply store usually sells those, or sometimes you can even pick them up used, but you can clean those or line them with those plastic bags and make sure those are nice and full of water. The other thing again is food. So obviously horses are meant to eat about 2% of their body weight a day in forage. So making sure that you have enough hay for each horse. So roughly a 1,000-pound horse needs between 15 and 20 pounds of forage a day. So basically just calculating, estimating how much you would need maybe for at least 72 hours post-storm if you can't find fresh feed or get access to good feed. Trying to keep your feed dry and stored in an appropriate place during a storm event is also really important. If you have further questions or need help either preparing for a storm or certainly after the storm has passed during the recovery period, our county agents are great resources, so contacting your local county extension agent. We also have many resources online, not only about hurricane preparedness, but we can also supply you with resources and materials on hurricane recovery. So making sure that, again, you can bring your farm and your animals back to some normalcy and safety after the storm event.